This time, Kevin Keegan's Newcastle United. They may have fallen short, but along the way, we definitely did love it.
No, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt the impossible to rank once and for all who is the greatest team of all time. My name's Graham Dunn, making the case for Oxford United, and over there with all the numbers at his hand, the nerve centre of data, it's Jamie Rooney.
Do you know, just for anyone who's listening to these things, I never know what Graham's going to start with, but I just want to bet with myself because I bet myself that you couldn't resist some reference to Love It in your intro. So I feel good that I've just won a kind of a no cash bet with myself to just kind of completely confirm I know you so well.
You couldn't not resist it, although this one there are so many options. This is kind of the ultimate intro. We are doing Kevin Keegan's Newcastle United, the entertainers, undoubtedly. Absolutely glorious story, and delighted we are joined by a Newcastle United devotee expert. Call him what you will. We're joined Simon Brunskill. Welcome.
Thank you very much, both of you. Cheers. Nice to be here.
Good to have you on board. The Keegan years, you kind of are they kind of the best times of your Newcastle supporting memories?
Well, so far, yeah. I mean, I started off. I mean, you can tell from my accent, I'm not a proper Geordie, but I was born there. So, my dad told me to be a Newcastle fan straight away, so I had no choice. So, the early years were pretty dire, to be honest. Sort of when you first go to your first match, sort of late 70s, early 80s. Newcastle were not in a good place, and it was pretty depressing. But you stick with what you've got, basically. And as far as I'm concerned, it then kind of went to this amazing place in the mid 90s, where I suppose I was mid 20s and just absolutely loved it. Since then, a few sort of ups and downs. I mean, the Bobby Robson years were great to a large extent, and then we're back there. Sort of daring to think that we've won something this year. I know Scholes said it was a Mickey Mouse Cup or something, but we did win something. And,
I'll take it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Who knows what might happen? We're challenging for a Champions League place again. I think it's ours to throw away. So it's exciting times again. But that time, I think it's just such a formative time in recent football history.
We will come on to talk about that particular game, the Liverpool Newcastle, the 4-3. But whenever you're looking at anything that sort of defines the Premier League years, the Sky era, it is that game, it is that period.
Absolutely. You've got key moments. We can all reel them off. The Aguero moment and things like that. But I think because it was so early on in that what we know now as sort of this football being everywhere, and that everybody watched that match. Everybody's second team at that time, if you can argue if you can actually have a second team, but most people, liked the way Newcastle played, loved the way Newcastle played. I heard something in a podcast I was listening to recently. It just said that we ended up always being on the Monday Night Football. So we were always having to sort of see what Man United did in those two seasons, and then try and kind of match them. And it obviously didn't go that well.
It is interesting though, isn't it? Because this period, and Jamie, I think in your kind of briefing notes, you sort of talk about them coming off the back of a sort of poor period, but actually it's a prolonged period, isn't it? It's they do kind of make it back into the top division, but there's from about 78 through to before Keegan walks through the door, they are actually a second tier side for most of that period.
Yeah, and I was looking at also like the attendance. So the average attendance in 80 1980, 1981 was only 16,000.
Yeah.
Now, you think about Newcastle now, and you could sell that stadium out twice, I think. And okay, it was a smaller ground than it is now, but still 16,000. I think it jumped to about 29,000 in the mid 80s, but it's still nothing. It's not huge.
Up until the 1990s, they've been on a bit of a trophy drought as well. They've won 4 championships, English championships, but the last one of those was in the 1920s. I think they've won an FA Cup up until the 1950s. Simon can correct me on this, and they've had a one success in Europe in the 1960s. So not only they kind of yo-yo in between the two divisions during this period, primarily in the top division, they're not really adding to their trophy haul from their successful origins when they started off.
I had this Newcastle United history book, which I loved, and it was just had this, how many times we've been in the final in say, and I think it was 11 times more than Man United, more than Arsenal, more than Liverpool. And that was sort of in 1980, and then obviously everyone just overtook us. But that 1950s period was amazing. My dad, who you know, Jamie, I mean, he went to a couple of the Fairs Cup games in '69 because that's where they were living at the time. That's where they had me. So that is the last proper silverware, because you don't really count promotions, do you?
Before we get on to the Messiah's return, there is a pivotal person who joins before that period, isn't there, Jamie? In that John Hall comes in, and he's really central to this reigniting of Newcastle.
So I think there's a whole load of just local businessmen with no direction. He comes along, and he actually splashes a lot of cash. I mean, it's really interesting now when you see all the kind of the money that's being spent, what they're talking about selling, putting a price on Alexander Isak of 150 million quid or something. And then, John Hall was breaking transfer records, sort of 3 in 1 week, I think, at one point. But we're only talking like 2 million quid, which seems nothing now. But yeah, I mean, him, Freddie Shepherd, they sort of really invested in the team, they invested in the management, they invested in the stadium as well. So the stadium went from smaller to, I think it was mid-30s in that period that we're talking about today, up until it's 55 now, I think.
With John Hall, who was knighted in 91, Sir John Hall, and I think he's still kicking around at the Rifle in 92, 93. It wasn't just a football club that he breathed life into, because I think his background was, I think he was a bit of a developer who earned quite a bit of money. He wanted to develop the area as well. And I think when he did invest in the area, he created rugby teams, basketball teams, ice hockey teams. I think his vision was, I think he coined it the Barcelona of the North, in terms of having all of these different associations linked into brand Newcastle United.
Yeah. And he also, I think he's famous for building the Metro Centre, which is the big like the Arndale Centre in Manchester. So, an absolutely huge personality and businessman up there.
And fan, I guess, Simon. Was he a fan of Newcastle?
Absolutely. And if you compare him to his successor, Mike Ashley, for instance, you wouldn't argue that guy was a fan. No, I mean, him and Kevin Keegan, Sir John Hall and Kevin Keegan seem to have a very good relationship where, focusing on getting the best out of the team and just creating this amazing team.
We get to this kind of pivotal moment, which, and it is clearly a pivotal moment. February the 1st, Newcastle in 1992, Newcastle are struggling near the bottom of the division. They lose 5-2 at the Manor Ground to the mighty Oxford United. And
did you know he's going to get that one in as well, Jamie?
Yeah, he makes a lot of course. He likes to get an Oxford United reference in on every episode.
Imagine my delight that this was Aussie United. This was the moment. And it's come to be something we've seen quite regularly, that teams losing to Oxford is the trigger point for a lot of managers. And it was in this instance as well.
Yeah, and Keegan comes along. I mean, I've heard this great story, I don't know if you've seen it, with Steve Howie talking about Ozzy Ardiles' training sessions. Don't know if you've seen it. It's brilliant.
No.
And it's talking about how he used to line up, like get the team sorted at the start of the week. And then that would be the starting 11 for the rest of the week. And they were playing unopposed. So it's just the 11 players to give them a bit of confidence to go and just play. So knock in a few goals. And it went straight back from the centre, straight back to the centre half. We then passed it straight back to the goalie, who wasn't in goal because he was doing his gloves. So they were 1-0 down, playing against no one. Yeah, and that was Newcastle at the time.
But Keegan sort of comes, Newcastle are in the wilderness, and Keegan has been in the wilderness himself because he's pretty much last seen getting on that helicopter, flying off the pitch at St James's Park, and sort of nobody's seen him for 8 years.
Yeah. I mean, incredible. I was talking to a colleague who played professional football, and I think he was at that game, and just said it was amazing, sort of almost biblical, being lifted off into the sky, never to be seen again. But yeah, he came back, and aren't we glad that he did?
It's a real ballsy move from John Hall, really, because Keegan hasn't got any managerial experience, and and Keegan's featured on a number of teams when we've done on these podcasts. The Southampton team of the early '80s, Lorimer Menemy, and the Hamburg team, the European Cup winners. And we know from those pods, Graham, that Keegan can be. He's a very emotional character. So when he's done with something, he's done with something. And I think,
yes,
and I think it's a bold move from John Hall. But as we're about to find out, it really does work until it stops working, and then Keegan becomes Keegan again.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Jamie. I mean, that's come out a lot in some of these conversations I've been listening to from former players, just saying that they absolutely loved playing for him, but at the same time they could see he was an emotional character, and I mean he had to be stopped resigning a couple of times, I think, where he was talked out of it as well by the board, just because, well, if it didn't go his way. I don't know. I don't know enough about his psyche to understand why, but I suppose he'd done it as he was the most recognisable English player for the whole of the 70s, wasn't he? And then he came back to Newcastle to play, and was treated as a messiah. So it could go wrong, but it didn't initially, Graham. Yeah, maybe it did in the end.
Keegan is sort of like the ultimate vibes appointment, isn't it? It's kind of, this is purely, there's nothing. Actually, that's harsh to say. There's nothing in his record. I mean, he's kind of unbelievably impressive football career.
Yeah.
Worked as a pundit, all sorts of bits and pieces that he'd done along the way. But fundamentally, the appointment is based on, this is Kevin Keegan and the lift it is going to give.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's from the heart, isn't it? And it's it galvanised the city, but at the same time, if you were perhaps more pragmatic, you might think, well, this is a huge gamble.
And it does pay off straight away, isn't it? Because I think Newcastle, as Graham's mentioned, were struggling at the bottom of tier 2, looking to go into the third tier potentially for the first time in their history. And it's almost like Keegan gets results straight away. And there's also, I think, an insight into the type of football you're going to start seeing with Keegan, because some of the score lines in his early days are definitely a precursor to some of the exciting stuff we're going to see over the next few years.
Absolutely. I mean, it's that kind of that new manager bounce instantaneously. But we did finish 20th in that season, when he came along. So very, very close. I think it was just escaped the drop by 1 or 2 places, and that was only in the last 3 or 4 games. So yeah, but then the bounce then. And just into next season, I think it was 10 or 11 straight games in a row.
That 91-92 championship season is a fascinating one, and there's a couple of great there are sort of teams that we referenced on this podcast earlier, because that is the same season that Kenny Dalglish's Blackburn with Jack Walker's money. So they go up. That's the year they go up in via the playoffs to just creep in 6th place. And it's also the year John Beck's Cambridge come within a kick or two of creeping in there as well.
And it was around that time, actually, because my folks are from Burnley, that Burnley almost dropped out of the
Football League, yeah.
Football League as well.
Yeah.
I think that was in about was it 88 or something like that. I can't remember. So, it wasn't the greatest Brunskill household with the two teams you were supporting.
So what's definitely clear in that over that summer, Keegan acts pretty quickly to turn things around, and Hall backs him. So they bring in an impressive roster of players. The most eye-catching one is Andy Cole.
Yeah.
But there's a string of other players: Rob Lee, Scott Sellers, John Beresford. There's a lot of players who come in who play a key role over this period.
Yeah, and I think getting Beardsley back was absolutely crucial as well. I mean, what a player he was.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Very understated footballer, quite a humble man as well, but so super intelligent on the football pitch. One of those players that just understood space and technical ability.
Going back to that, what you were saying, Graham, with Andy Cole, I mean, the goals they scored in that first season back, it was just absolutely incredible. I think I got here that Cole scored 41 and Beardsley scored 24, which is just incredible.
That is remarkable. And they win the championship with 96 points as well.
But then obviously, as we know now, if you get promoted, it's not always means you're going to go straight to the top of the league, does it? We're seeing. I mean, it's even more obvious now.
The opposite now, yeah.
If you go up, you're more than likely to go straight back down. Whereas we didn't in that first season back. I mean, we did really well, came third, which was incredible.
One of the other noteworthy things, which is seems to be a thing about Kevin Keegan teams, is that they do start seasons well. So that championship winning year, it's 11 straight wins. Yeah. You can say this about all teams, but I think that this definitely feels like a Keegan factor, that momentum plays such a big part in how he manages and how he gets teams going.
Yeah. I mean, it's a confidence thing. I read a quote by Keegan. He just said, "I buy good players and let them play."
Yeah.
So it's a very simple managerial kind of idea. Obviously, it's not as simple as that, but I think Barton was saying, apart from one match, which was the Newcastle 5-0 victory over Man United, it was just a very relaxed atmosphere in the changing rooms, just good man management, but not sort of Fergie hair drying or anything like that.
It's difficult to think of another manager who players kind of wanted to play for. They all talk about the charisma. And of course he is, especially for this generation of players, they will have grown up watching Kevin Keegan, who was the biggest English football superstar there'd been for 20 years.
Absolutely. And if you're playing for someone that you respect, I think that makes a huge difference. And if you're playing for someone that wants you to go out and play, I mean, that must be very liberating as well. I suppose when it starts to go wrong, then where is the plan B? And I think that's perhaps what happened later on, is that when we suddenly came across this idea that we weren't going to win every game 4-0 or something, then suddenly, all right, what can we do now? What can we do now? How do you adapt? And maybe that's one of the reasons why he walked away, because he wasn't able to do that. I don't know. That's just pure speculation.
I think one of the other things he did, I mean, obviously you got this incredible superstar in Kevin Keegan. A lot of these players that would have signed and played for Newcastle under Keegan would have been their hero growing up as well. And I think what Keegan did, even though he had that massive appeal, he still sold Newcastle United to these players. I think you mentioned Rob Lee joined in the 92-90 or the 91-92 season from Charlton. And Rob Lee just said, Keegan just sold it to me. He goes, I only wanted to be there after spending 5 minutes with Keegan, the way he would sell it. And that seems to be a common theme. So when you listen to some of the players that Keegan was able to add to this incredible squad that he's building over this period of time, they all seem to be convinced by what Keegan is selling.
Absolutely. And then the team he's got around him, I mean, Terry McDermott, I mean, that guy is an absolute legend as well. And just be able to turn up and play for these people who've been played at the very, very top of the game themselves. I mean, that must be incredible.
And it wasn't just signings as well, because they actually had a decent crop of local young players who came through that team. You've mentioned Howie and Watson.
Yeah, Lee Clark.
There's a lot of players who come through that side and make a mark in that team.
Yeah, there are. I mean, I was thinking about that, though, when you compare it to, say, Man United or Liverpool. I mean, we've always had amazing footballers coming through in Newcastle. And if you think, Gascoigne, Waddle, Beardsley, and just a slightly earlier generation than these guys, I don't think we focused enough on the youth team coming through and things like that. So we couldn't develop that Manchester United side that did so well. We had to buy in the players. And actually, if you think about a lot of these Newcastle players, they didn't, they were absolutely key components of the squad, but not always playing all the time. And I think that was in the days when you had, 3 substitutes maybe?
Mm.
Yeah.
Whereas now, if you'd had 8 substitutes and things like that, I think it'd be a bit different. But yeah, I mean, going back to what you were saying, I mean, brought in a lot of experience. I mean, someone like Barry Venison was a great buy initially, and that sort of, then you start playing alongside these people, and that sort of prepares you for the next generation.
The fullbacks seem to sum up Keegan's approach, actually, to some extent. Venison and Beresford, good players. I watched Beresford play Pompey quite a lot. A very good player. They're progressive, much more progressive fullbacks than they are defensive fullbacks.
Yeah, and Barton as well. Put him in there. Yeah, I mean, that's the way he played, wasn't it? It's the same with the wingers as well. I mean, that different to what it is now, but playing with 2 out-and-out wingers in this team in the 95 to 97, Ginola and Gillespie. I mean, that was pretty unusual as well.
Yeah.
And I think, there is that criticism of did Keegan's teams know how to defend? And I've been thinking about that. And they actually had a very good defence. And, that season the first season when we came second, we only conceded about, I think, you might know the stats there, Jamie, it might sort of between 35 and 40 goals. It was
37.
37
goals, yeah.
Which is, I don't think a team, one of Newcastle's teams has ever done that since.
That first year in the Premiership, so that's in the Premier League when Beardsley comes back, and Jamie, you've noted they brought in some experienced heads with Barry Venison, Malcolm Allen, but none more experienced than John Burridge, who makes an appearance on loan.
His third stint at Newcastle United.
His third stint, because what happens the following season? He then goes off to join some other club to go and sit on a bench somewhere, and then he comes back the following year as well.
But he was an amazing professional. What a career that guy had.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen the videos of him warming up. Very special. Absolutely brilliant.
He has featured on these things previously, Simon. We do have a bit of a Burridge loving. In particular, his obsession that he used to have when he was a player to have his dress up in his full kit, glove and boots to sit down to watch Match of the Day at 10 o'clock on a Saturday evening.
Yeah.
I mean, that's commitment.
A proper character.
He was a proper character, yeah.
I've heard some good stories about him from my ex-colleague John Humphrey, who used to play for Charlton and Palace.
So Newcastle finished third in that first season, and the next season, the 94, 95, that's really becomes quite a pivotal year and one of transformation. But again, it starts unbelievably well. Newcastle win, I think, their first 6 games, and I don't think they lose their first game until Man United. I think 12 games in. So again, there's this ability to
Yeah.
start seasons really well.
Yeah, and it obviously wasn't as successful as the first season, but I think still came sixth that season, which for a team pretty newly promoted and in this state of, as you said, Graham, sort of flux, trying to create the team that Keegan was after was a big achievement.
It is strange in some way, kind of making sense of it in my Manchester United head. There are parallels with Blackburn Rovers in terms of the trajectory of the teams, because Blackburn are just a couple of years ahead in Newcastle in terms of coming from the Championship, a big team from a historical perspective, finishing fairly high in their first season, doing better in the second season, and then doing even better in the third season. Newcastle seem to be on a similar trajectory as Blackburn Rovers.
Yeah, and I'd say also the setup is similar with Jack Walker and Sir John Hall. That kind of rich local benefactor that doesn't want to suck money from the team, wants to put money into the club, and wants to sort of see his boyhood dreams, if you like, realised.
He really does put money into the club as well. I mean, you've already alluded to it. He is breaking transfer records almost every season.
Yeah, so much money got spent. I mean, as I said, in very seemingly now, when we look at a £2 million transfer for a defender, it doesn't seem that much. And then obviously we broke the world transfer record a little later with a certain Alan Shearer. So the money was there to be spent, and they spent it. And I mean, they bought some duffers as well. But when we think of, as any club does, but when we think of some of these amazing players that came in, absolutely incredible.
I was amazed looking back. I mean, obviously, other than signing John Burridge again in 94, 95, I had totally passed me by that they had signed Steve Guppy from Wickham.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was there.
About that.
Didn't play many games, but yeah, he was there for, I think he was there for at least one season. But yeah, he didn't, I don't think he featured. But
No.
it's like you said, Simon, Steve Guppy was a very fast left winger who was your modern, your old-fashioned kind of get it down the wing, cross it in for your centre forwards. And that's the style of play that Kevin Keegan was looking for. So it's no surprise that he identified Guppy. I think, was he at Wickham or Leicester then? I can't remember. I was thinking directly from Wickham. Oh, wow, that's amazing. Because he did go on and did fairly good stuff at Leicester with Martin O'Neill.
Yeah. He seems to have got sold. I wonder if he then went back to Wickham before he goes to Leicester, because it looked like he went to Port Vale after this, which seems really, I don't remember that at all in any way. So the Steve Guppy's career path, I kind of lost track of.
He was quality. I really enjoyed watching him play back in the day.
Yeah, but absolutely direct. At this point, I think they had that year, or the previous season, they signed Rolf Fox as well. So, they had Franz Carr there as well. So, you had proper out-and-out wingers with real pace.
Yeah.
In that season as well, that first, that 94-95 season, kind of that almost transitional season where they really are starting to become a massive deal in the Premier League. At the start of that season, they pick up Philippe Albert as well from Anderlecht. And Philippe Albert is, at this point, a serial winner. He's won championships with Mechelen. He's won championships with Anderlecht. So they're bringing in an absolute quality centre-back. And it's quite ironic as well, because around about this time, Ferguson was using Bruce and Pallister. And obviously United and Newcastle had this rivalry for a few years. And Ferguson wanted to bring in a passing centre-back, a cultured centre-back like Philippe Albert. As it turned out, he brought in William Prunier, who only played 2 games. He was no Philippe Albert, who was Simon, what a footballer. It must have been an absolute joy watching this central defender playing football like you could only dream of.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I spent most of my time, career, whatever, playing football as a centre half. And if only I could be half the man he was. Absolutely brilliant, strong, quick. But as you say, Jamie, it was his ability to bring the ball out and to pass that was just, it was unusual, given what we're used to typically as British centre backs, basically.
The key piece of transfer business
Oh,
is,
yeah.
of course, Andy Cole, and this is the first. This is one of our first signs of the Keegan kind of impromptu flashpoint, heart on a sleeve kind of moment. Because I think we all kind of remember. I think it was just the setting. There's this kind of impromptu press conference on outside the gates of St James's Park in front of an angry mob. It's kind of extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't imagine that now, could you? Sort of a manager coming out to sort of talk to the fans about, and you could understand why they were so upset. I mean, he banged in 41 goals that previous season, breaking the Newcastle record. Okay, you trust in Kevin Keegan, but do you trust in Kevin Keegan? Because you're selling the best player, the player that is just absolutely incredible. And who are you selling him to? You're not selling him abroad. You're selling him to bloody Man United. But he had a plan. And actually, okay, who knows if Cole had stayed? And fair play to Cole. I mean, what a career he had at Man United. Absolutely brilliant. And there's obviously discussion about whether he wanted the move to happen. And you don't want to have a player playing for you that doesn't want to be there. But 6 million and then Keith Gillespie as a counterweight. I mean, that was a pretty good piece of business when you look at it with hindsight, because that allowed us to buy Celeste Ferdinand and David Ginola, amongst other players. Those were perhaps the final pieces in the Keegan plan that put us into this amazing team that we had for those sort of, if we're thinking about the entertainers, this kind of label that Newcastle have got, is for me, it's those 2 years. It's a sort of 95, 96, and then 96, 97. But 96, 97 has its own ups and downs, doesn't it? But yeah, I mean, I just always remember what stuck with me about that was Keegan on the steps, but also just people film of Geordies with Andy Cole tattoos on them, thinking, what are they going to do now? Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't know if I've imagined it. I thought it was somebody who had an entire, like the week before, had their entire back made up with Andy Cole. Massive, not even like a small one. It was a massive Andy Cole.
Yeah, brilliant.
So John Hall, as he was called then, back Keegan. He whether he was part of the plans of, because you're right, he goes and invests the money in Celeste Ferdinand, as you rightly called him. But John Hall gave Keegan the full back in. I think he went on what was Football Focus at the time, and was happy to give an interview to back his manager and to not just give him the kind of the vote of confidence, actually say, no, this is the right step and this is what we're going to do. And this is where we see Newcastle. So fans may be unhappy now, but in 5 or 6 years' time, we're aiming for them not to be unhappy because we're going to be winning trophies.
Absolutely. And obviously it didn't turn out that way quite, but, I couldn't agree with you more. That idea of actually having a plan, and Les Ferdinand and Andy Cole are two different types of player, aren't they? And if you then think about, well, you've got Ginola on one side and you've got Gillespie on the other side and you've got Beardsley just behind and Les up front. I mean, that is perhaps Andy Cole wouldn't work as well with that setup, perhaps. Who knows?
I mean, he's so much more than a target man, but because he could play as a target man and finish at like pretty much everything in his armoury, really, Ferdinand does seem like the ideal player to have if you are going to be putting crosses in. I saw an interview with Ginola talking about it was just kind of a dream to have him at the end of crosses.
Yeah, and I suppose romantically, he's a classic Newcastle number 9. Going back to Jackie Milburn, Malcolm McDonald,
Billy Whitehurst.
Yeah. Mickey Quinn. Yeah.
Well, Mickey Quinn,
I love Mickey Quinn.
He was top scorer for a couple of years in those wilderness years, wasn't he?
He was a legend.
It is fascinating that bit of transfer business and the punt. The other thing that really strikes me about it is a real reminder of the days where, sort of pre-transfer windows where transfers could happen at any point. That's what foxed me with this Steve Guppy one. He signed in August and they sold him by November. And in this instance, I mean, there was no hint of this transfer coming. It's completely out of the blue.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
yeah. I mean, this podcast I listened to with Lee Clark, who was best mates with Andy Cole because they used to play England schoolboys together and stuff. And they used to give each other lifts to training. And on the morning, Andy Cole didn't turn up to give him a lift. And Lee Clark just went, all right, well, I'm not going to get fined. I'm just going to go on my own. And then half on the way there, he got a phone call and said, I'm sorry, couldn't tell you. We couldn't tell anybody. Andy Cole couldn't even tell members of his own family in case it leaked out. It was so secret. Whereas now you've got people speculating. It's almost like a profession, isn't it? Speculating on transfer.
Whether you appreciate it or not, I can tell you from a Manchester United fan perspective, I remember being in work when I heard the news, and yeah, totally unexpected. And I do actually physically remember dancing around with joy because of taking what was probably the best goal scorer in the Premier League at that moment. I mean, there were some brilliant goal scorers at that moment. You know, Robbie Fowler was doing his stuff. Stan Collymore was doing some great stuff with Forest, I think, at the time. And obviously Ferdinand at QPR. But Andy Cole was super prolific. And yeah, I was super excited.
It's difficult without sort of knowing the ins and outs of how long this transfer was in the works or what was going on in there. There is an element which feels quite Keegan about it as well, which is Newcastle have this great start to the season and then one defeat in the first 12, gone fantastically well, and then they hit this really sticky mid-season point. And actually, I think this is a run where they get, I think, 1 win in 10. This is where they kind of totally drift off. And you can almost imagine Keegan getting 6 or 7 games into it and, well, something's got to change. Either I'm going to walk or let's sell our best striker.
Absolutely. Fairly chaotic thinking if that is the case, isn't it? What I've read, I mean, Ferdinand was kind of being tapped up to come to Newcastle with this in mind. So, yeah. So it's sort of like a ready-made replacement and comes in, slots in and does brilliantly himself.
But Keegan came out and said he knows what he's doing. It's his responsibility. He'll be judged on it one way or the other. Yeah. He uses the money from that to sign Les Ferdinand, David, Ginola, Warren Barton, Shaka Hislop, and they launch their epic title challenge of 95-96. And we'll talk about that in the second half. Hi, Graham here. We're just about wrapping up our plans for this current season, but we're already turning our attentions to our next season. If you've been listening, there are some teams you would like us to cover or would even like to come on and talk about those teams, you can contact us, drop us a line. How do they get hold of us, Jamie?
Well, they can get hold of us by using the social media accounts, X or Blue Sky, where we have the same handles. We've got yourself at Said and Dunn and myself, Couch Pundito. So Couch Pundito at Blue Sky and Said and Done at Blue Sky or on the X, aka Twitter equivalent.
And you can also get hold of us on Insta, which I think the kids call it these days. What's our handle on that one?
Yes, we're on Instagram where we're trying to share some of our little videos. So please give us a like, a follow, and keep in touch with our little videos. So we are on Instagram as the Greatest Team Football Podcast, or by far the Greatest Team Football Podcast. Search for either of those and you'll find us. Please follow.
So welcome back. We are talking about Kevin Keegan's Newcastle United, this glorious side which come from almost nowhere, from the wilderness, from the brink of relegation to the third tier, to mount a genuine title challenge. And we get to the 95-96 season, and this is really the season where Newcastle were always known, Keegan's Newcastle were known as entertainers, as an entertaining side. And I think the way set up always kind of allowed for that. But I think there's an element where bringing in David Ginola is kind of like certainly from an entertainment perspective, that's almost the last piece of the puzzle. I mean, we can go on to talk about how he tries to crowbar in another piece of the puzzle that probably isn't needed in Tino Asprilla a little bit later. But at this point, Ginola, who arrives with, I knew nothing about him before he arrived. That was that kind of, I think we were still in an era of, Jamie, you were probably different because you study all European football with your data Excel spreadsheets open, even then. But, players would arrive in the Premiership and you didn't really know anything about them. You had no idea what to expect. When Ginola arrived, he was just transformational.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'd agree with you on that. I mean, Newcastle had a few in the past. We think Mirandinha turning up from Brazil. And he didn't know much about these players. And I certainly didn't know a huge amount about Ginola. I mean, French football, we knew Chrissy Waddle playing over there for Marseille, and they were good during that Bernard Tapie era, weren't they? They were excellent. But Paris Saint-Germain, I suppose, a bit like they've always been, not the big club in Paris, but a very young club, and I didn't know much about Ginola, but what a player! What a player!
Yeah, so he was absolutely despised by the French public, and he was despised because he was responsible, according to Gérard Houllier, the French manager at the time, the national team's manager, for France failing to qualify for the 1994 World Cup finals. They needed a draw against Bulgaria in the final game in Paris, and Ginola made a mistake which led to the goal that denied France from going to the World Cup finals. And Houllier hung him out to dry. I think he referred to him as something like a dagger through the hearts of the French people.
Wow.
So he wasn't very popular in France. So he was probably looking for a way out. He may have seen a similar way out that Cantona had at United and thought, why wouldn't I want to go to England? The Premier League is the growing league at the time. I'm not really liked in France. I can get away from this stuff. And, he's going as far as he can in England as well to get away from it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unlike French football teams to fall out, is it, with each other? But, absolutely. But he was an unknown quantity to most people. But I think very, very soon people got to see, what a class player he was. I think it was Warren Barton was talking about the first time he met him. He was just kind of longish hair, shirt unbuttoned, beads and stuff, just looking very, very handsome and probably not fitting into the Newcastle squad.
I can absolutely imagine Warren Barton and David Ginola having a really long and detailed conversation about hair.
Yeah, absolutely. Both of them beautiful locks of hair.
And Gavin Peacock trying to get involved.
Yeah, less about that the better. Or Darren Peacock as well.
Oh, Darren Peacock.
Yeah.
Thank you, Simon. Yeah. Harry, it was Darren. Yes, my apologies.
I had forgotten. In fact, not only had I forgotten, I completely escaped me that I think it's in that promotion year, the Keegan, who he claims was possibly his best ever signing, was Brian Kilcline.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
And that was another, hair and moustache connection.
Hair. Yeah, that was what you could see where my mind was going with that. It was the hair connection.
Yeah. Yeah,
I had no memory of Kilcline playing for them, but I think at the time, this sounds very plausible. I think at the time Keegan was close to quitting. John Hall wouldn't give him any more money for players, and he managed to kind of dig up a bargain in terms of Kilcline. And I think it was about having a leader on the pitch, probably as much as anything.
Yeah,
it is a real leap of faith selling Andy Cole. Putting the belief in that you can change things, partly because Newcastle have been, over the previous 10 years or so, Newcastle have been a selling club, haven't they? And I remember I did watch I was rewatching an interview with John Hall, and he's talking about this, and he's trying to reassure them that we're not a selling club. It's not Waddle again. It's not, but obviously they have, we've seen Gascoigne, Waddle, Beardsley, this production line of fantastic local talent moving on because Newcastle aren't achieving enough.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's what I could never fathom when I was younger and obviously much more naive to the way football works, thinking, well, if we just held on to these players, surely then we'd be the best team in the league, But it doesn't quite work out like that. But you're right. And then, again, probably jumping a bit in advance here, but then what do we do with two of our best players? We sell them to Spurs, with Les and David.
Yeah.
And it's just okay, and that's different because that's not Keegan anymore. But it still kind of shows that we're not necessarily. I think going back to what we were talking about with all the transfers, during the John Hall era, we were definitely a buying club, but I can remember quite clearly thinking, what is going on selling Andy Cole? What is going on? What is going to happen?
I think Ferdinand he was always a little. I think he was always fractionally underrated for what a player he was. Actually, scored goals literally everywhere. He played consistently, scored, led the line, sort of ticked almost every box. But I think there was an element of him that was maybe perceived as slightly unfashionable in some way. I don't know. I think he could have, not necessarily unfashionable, but the Ferdinand was perhaps written off before his time several times.
I think he's probably my favourite ever Newcastle player. I just love him to bits. We can talk about Shearer, we can talk about other players. Obviously, I love Philippe Albert as a defender, but Les Ferdinand, what an absolute joy to watch. I remember going to watch Newcastle versus Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, and I could only get tickets in the shed end, which is not the nicest place to be as an away supporter. And Les did one of his characteristic leaps and just like, bam, and it went up against the bar. And I was just arms folded, don't say anything, but absolutely loved watching him.
Well, it's just his return in the first season is pretty impressive. So I'm just double checking my figures here. But yeah, 37 league games he plays and he scores 25 league goals. That's an incredible return.
And this Newcastle side they are playing the beautiful game. They're playing it with beautiful players. David Ginola is this sun-soaked god playing.
I think I know where you're going, and just before you get there, we should ignore. We've already talked about how incredible Kevin Keegan's team started. And this start is something special. Is it?
Yeah.
Correct me if I get it wrong. Did they win their first 10 out of the first 11?
9 out of the first 10, I think.
9 out of the first 10, is it? Yeah. Okay. Which is, when you consider this is an era where Ferguson is building his empire, Jack Walker's Blackburn are the reigning champions. Liverpool is still a team to be reckoned with, and Arsenal are slowly on the move. To win that amount of games at the beginning, and they're miles ahead of everyone.
Absolutely. Everyone's playing catch up. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And you're just thinking, all right, obviously as a Newcastle fan, you're thinking, when's this going to stop? Because that's what you've grown up thinking,
This will never last. This will never last.
This can't go on. This can't go on forever. But it was so exciting.
Out of their first 25 games, they win 19. So they lose 3 and they draw 3. But, they virtually don't draw. They are winning an extraordinary number of those games. And I think maybe that's that kind of we'll score more than, doesn't matter how many the opposition score, we'll score more than them mentality.
We know we're just gonna score. We know we're gonna come and stick a few goals in. So if we score more than them, then we'll win.
So Man United are the big rivals. So as you say, Jamie, they're not reigning champions. Blackburn have won, but Man United are in a funny place as well, aren't they? Because they're without Cantona for the start of this season. Yeah,
Cantona has been banned for 8 months from the start of the year, so he returns in.
For, by the way, the most hilarious thing that's ever happened in football.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
I say, a bit like JFK's assassination, we all remember where we were when Kevin Keegan did that interview. But I think we all remember where we were when we saw Cantona's Kung Fu kick.
Yeah, and the commentary on that's superb as well, isn't it?
I was under the
brilliant.
stairs, Harry Potter style, listening to the radio in the very first house that I bought, a 1-bedroom maisonette, listening to it in disbelief and feeling absolutely doom and gloom. But yes, United don't have Cantona for the first part. And in the summer, they've also got rid of Hughes, Kunchelskis and Ince. And I think one of the tabloids run the headline Gold Trafford because they were cashing in on these players. But Ferguson's got a crop of youngsters that he believes in. And they start, all those 5 youngsters, the class of 92, they start this season. This is a season where we really see them. They lose to Villa in the first game, but then they recover quite well. And once Cantona comes back, the team does start to have a different belief. But without Cantona, Manchester United aren't challenging for this league title. Cantona is absolutely crucial. I think there were about 7 games that season where United won 1-0 and Cantona scores the single goal. Even in a draw against QPR towards the end of the season, they're 1-0 down. Cantona gets the equaliser in injury time. So without Cantona, this United team are not challenging Newcastle or anyone for that Premier League title.
There was a survey done about from listeners to this podcast up in Newcastle and about pivotal moments in that season. And people always talk about the 4-3 Liverpool game as being the pivotal moment. And then there's quite a big number of people that voted for actually the return of Cantona. Nothing really to do with Newcastle. It's just that galvanising effect that he had on Manchester United, and the fact that they, as you said, Jamie, went through and they won ugly, didn't they? Lots of
very ugly. Yep.
I think that when you beat us, it was a sort of scuffed Cantona shot that somehow went in when we've been absolutely dominating you.
Yeah, I think that's the game in March at St James's Park, and it was so one-sided. And I think Peter Schmeichel probably has his greatest football game of all time.
Yes.
There may be a couple of games to Denmark where he'd argue that was there, but I think Schmeichel was just in another world and was totally unbeatable and managed to keep United in. And then they nick one early after the second half. And then again, it's just back to the wall stuff. It was total domination. And, the 5-0 that happens the following season, you could see that happening in this game. It just so happens that Schmeichel was having the game of his life.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Simon. This is looking at it fresh. I think this is a story which is so easy to view it through the prism of Newcastle and the idea of Newcastle blow this 12-point lead that they have in January. But Man United win 13 out of their last 15 games. They are relentless. And whilst Newcastle definitely do have a dip, you do have to give credit to United for the way they come into it.
It's kind of the flip side of the great start that Newcastle did. Man U have just replicated it on the other side. And what you've got there is perhaps the sort of experience of Ferguson and his backroom team who know how to manage a whole season and win, come through to win a championship, whereas Newcastle didn't have that experience. And I think there's probably, we talk in modern terms of game management and things like that. There were probably a few moments when you might have thought, all right, well, let's not go out and try and win 4-0. Let's maybe settle for a 0-0 draw or something like that. But who knows? Who knows?
There is another, from my perspective, and it'd be great to get your view on this, Simon, pivotal moment in Newcastle's season. So Graham already alluded to it. So I think in February, Tito Asprilla, a fantastic Colombian football player that probably not many people have heard of, signs for Newcastle when they're riding high with what feels like a settled team. And then shortly after he signs, and it'd be good to know whether you think this had an effect or it's just coincidence, Newcastle do go on a poor run of form where I think they only win 3 out of 10 games, 3 out of 9 games.
Yeah.
Is the Asprilla element, did that have anything to do with it, or is it just purely coincidence?
People have often talked about that, haven't they? The Asprilla effect, and it somehow derailed Newcastle's season. I mean, David Batty was bought at the same time as Asprilla. I read somewhere, I don't know whether I believe it or not, that he was signed to, one of Keegan's ideas was him to be a ball-playing centre-half or something, which just seems absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't like to hazard a guess on that. I mean, think what Asprilla brought to Newcastle that season and the season after is absolutely brilliant.
He's a wonderful footballer.
It's definitely easy to view it. It definitely got, because it was the change. I think there's definitely an argument that teams need freshening up at that point. It's not, it seems far from a rash thing to do to improve the squad. I think it's probably says a lot about Keegan's kind of ambition, but maybe naivety on the one hand, because you're bringing, at that stage there weren't a great deal of Colombian footballers playing in the Premier League.
No, exactly. And there's that great story about when he arrives at Newcastle Airport in a snowstorm in a massive fur coat. And you just think, all right, well, because he was a bit crazy, wasn't he, as well? And what that does to a dressing room, does it upset it? I can't imagine he was fluent in English or anything like that when he arrived.
He came from Parma, didn't he? Italy. So he'd been playing in Italy for a while.
It's the kind of signing that you wouldn't think twice of now. But in 1996, 30 years ago, or almost 30 years ago, it was an unusual signing. He doesn't produce a Diego Forlan style. I mean, he scores 3 goals across the rest of the season. So he and goes on to be very successful.
I don't know. I think people will be still analysing why we didn't win the Premiership that season, 95-96, for a long, long time. And that will be something that we talked about. I mean, I don't necessarily hold much truck for that, but there are probably wiser people than me that can put it all into a better picture. But great player.
So Keegan, a truly iconic figure, and he produces. There are these 2 absolutely iconic moments that come into this unfolding season. Is the interview. This is definitely the idea that Ferguson has got in Keegan's head, which he does kind of look as though he has.
Yeah. I mean, Ferguson was great like that. I mean, you just think about so many things are attributed to him, like the hairdryer, the Fergie time, that kind of thing. I mean, again, I heard something where Keegan was talking to, I think it's Terry McDermott or something, about that interview, and wasn't kind of rattled at all by it. He was just saying, all right, I just said it, have a look at that. It's quite funny. But it didn't come across that way. It came across to everybody that he was rattled, and that it was kind of was becoming a bit personal, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, it's classic emotional reaction, isn't it? Because I've watched it back recently as well. Almost, it's like one of those moments there. It's kind of ingrained. You always remember it because you love it. You love it, don't you? But he does seem to switch in the interview, and it's almost like it's spontaneous. It's like the emotion, something in the question from the interviewer has triggered this emotion, and then it just rises up, and then you can see his body language and the shape of him changes, and then he's really into it. It's almost like he's realized, oh my God, we're not going to win it. This is the reality. And it's kind of almost that penny drop moment, bless him. I don't know if it's so much about Ferguson's mind games. I mean, I love Alex Ferguson clearly and what he's given me in my lifetime, but I think there's a lot of history plays tricks on the mind. That's a Ferguson comment. And I think his mind games, has gone into a bit mythology. And I don't know if he was playing mind games with Keegan or he was just trying to do what he was normally doing and has just changed the whole psyche of the Leeds United team. My
favourite bit, of course, is, everyone remembers I would love it. But the bit where it's sort of, that's the clip. But then the interview goes on, and there's the bit where, and he's still got to go to Middlesbrough and get something there. Yeah. It's the least kind of surely that's one of the biggest empty threats you could possibly. Oh, but you still got to go to Middlesbrough and get something.
Ooh, going back to what you said right at the start, it's about that emotional background to him, and then it sort of, was it a meltdown? Lots of people will say yes, it was. Was it just honesty coming through, because that's the way Keegan was. He wore his heart on his sleeve, but actually it was just a normal reaction to a question, and he was just saying how he felt. But I agree with you, Jamie. I think it was that moment when actually realised we're not in the driving seat anymore like we were 3 months ago.
Yeah, and I think that driving seat has probably moved to Manchester United in March. So his rant is in April, but in March, obviously, they go to Anfield in what probably is the greatest football game that's ever been played in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Hard to quantify that, but I think this is a classic example of the brilliance of Keegan, the entertainment of Keegan, but the vulnerability of Keegan, because the game is sensational, but Newcastle are in the driving seat and they can win this game comfortably by just probably adopting a different tactic when they're 3-1 up. But Keegan doesn't do that. And it's very commendable, but equally, was it the right thing to do?
I think this game will be talked about for a long, long time to come. It's a bit frustrating when you watch it back, because you just think, all right, what could you have done there? Why are you still going for it? And Barton was interviewed. I listened to him. It was really funny. You know, this proper Cockney talking about how he wouldn't have let Stan Collymore anywhere near that ball because he would have kicked him so hard, you know, in the run up to it. And it's just thinking that final goal, and you just see Keegan slumped. But what I remember seeing though, there was just that. Did you see the awful red blazer he was wearing at the start?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it, Simon, because I can't deal with that. I mean, it really is. It's like he's gone to a family wedding or something like that. And, you know, he's a third relation because he's not even dressed appropriately. Yeah, it's an ill-fitting, ill-coloured blazer. It's a poor choice.
It's full Alan Partridge.
Yeah, absolutely. But then, I mean, we can't knock that Liverpool team. I mean, some great players in that team. Absolutely amazing.
It is. You know, that Liverpool team, they're only, you know, they are third. They're still in the contest. And there's a moment. I mean, Fowler's already scored a couple, and Collymore having an awful time there at that stage. I think with Liverpool, he's really struggling to live up to his reputation. So you've already got Collymore and Fowler playing, and then the commentary, right? The last has kind of rush to Barnes to kind of to play Russian Barnes.
McManaman's there as well, I think.
Yeah.
But I remember that game. I mean, it's probably the game that I've watched on the TV that has stuck with me the most, because I remember exactly where I was. I was around a mate's house in Streatham, and there was about 10 of us, all from the same football team, split between me and my brother as Newcastle fans, quite a few Man United fans, and the rest were sort of Liverpool fans. And it was just, you know, moments of utter joy, and then just utter despair at the end. And you just thought, oh God. And perhaps didn't realise at the time how much it mattered, because obviously it's one game in a season.
Yeah.
But with hindsight, it does seem fairly pivotal.
At the end of that season, United win the title by 4 points.
Yeah.
And obviously, if they closed, if Newcastle had seen that game out, the added pressure that it puts on United at the end, I think by that point, it does feel like the momentum has really shifted in that title race.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we lost to Blackburn and drew with Forest, and so you not necessarily deserve to win if you can't beat those two teams in the final run-up.
Yeah, the draw with Forest is. I remember this quite vividly because I watched that game. I think Sky TV covered it, and I think it finished 1-1. And Ian Wone scored an equaliser late in the second half, and it was an absolute fantastic goal. I think he's like thumped one from a good 30, 40 yards, and it's arrowed into the top corner. And he doesn't celebrate at all. There's no celebration. It's almost like, you know, he's killed off this great, entertaining team that everyone wanted to win the Premier League. And there he is, basically putting the final bullet in the carcass of this dying horse, unfortunately. It was bizarre to see such a great goal and then see such almost disappointment from Ian Wone.
Yeah, because at that time, I mean, unless you are, say, a Man United fan, everyone was wanting to watch Newcastle. You know, they were the team to watch. So everyone had a soft spot for Newcastle. Obviously, people like Geordies generally as well. So there was that element of, all right, it's a good club to watch and to support. So, it would be nice if they won it.
With the obvious caveat that anyone from Sunderland maybe didn't.
Okay. or Middlesbrough. Yeah, well pointed out.
People will write in.
I mean, it's a brilliant season. It's very unfortunate. Newcastle definitely missed an opportunity. They were by far the most entertaining football team in the Premier League. Their record is brilliant, though. 63% win ratio, 82 goals scored, 37, as we mentioned, against. These are championship winning statistics. These are the things that should win you titles. But I generally think it's the Cantona effect at United. Without Cantona, Newcastle go on and win the league probably by 10 points.
Now, we know the following season, so we are approaching the end of the Kevin Keegan era, but there's no sign in the summer that his enthusiasm and desire has waned, because they absolutely redouble. I mean, how can you improve on this team? What can you do? Well, you smash the transfer record and sign
world record.
Bring Alan Shearer to Newcastle, which just feels like the ultimate bit of business.
Oh, absolutely amazing. I mean, it was one of those moments, it's just like spine-tingling moments. And apparently there were like 15,000 Geordies around the stadium when it happened. Absolutely incredible. And I love listening to Alan Shearer when he talks about that time. And he talks about, well, you didn't win anything, did you? You could have gone to United and won everything. And he just goes, I don't care, because I wanted to play for Newcastle and wear that number 9 shirt in the black and white. And that just shows to me that football is something really, really important there. It's not just about your personal ambition. It's about, I mean, if he had gone to Man United, doubtless he would have won absolutely shed loads and been a brilliant player in a sort of the way that Wayne Rooney was, or something like that. But he chose to stay with Newcastle, or come to Newcastle, and that for me just means everything. And then, I mean, obviously, sort of, you've already got Ferdinand there, you've got Asprilla there, and then you're bringing Shearer in. I mean, there's got to be a method in that madness somewhere, hasn't there?
But the method in the madness is beautiful, and I really admire what Keegan was doing. So I think Keegan had read that he'd had a chat with Ferdinand to say, look, I want to bring in Shearer, but you're still part of my plans. And I think a lot of the games he's playing that classic 4-4-2 with 2 strikers. That rarity. We don't see teams playing with 2 strikers, not 2 strikers like Ferdinand and Shearer these days. And then you've got these, as Simon, as you already mentioned, these incredible, skillful, pacey wingers in Gillespie and Ginola that are just given the supply line. And then he's got the steel of Batty and Lee and, in the middle. And he's got options off the bench as well now. Absolutely. With, incredible players. It is, the team he's put together is fantastic. And it does feel, going into 96-97, Newcastle United, with signing Shearer, are going to win the Premier League.
Well, absolutely. That was the hope, and once again came close. I don't think we came as close as we did the season just gone. I think Man United sewed it up. It seemed more certain that season for Man U. There's a funny story about Shearer and the number 9 shirt, because obviously he wanted that, and Ferdinand apparently just said, yeah, fine, he deserves it. But so he got the number 10 shirt, which was Lee Clark's shirt, who was really pissed off about it.
Well, at least Lee Clark knows where he stands in the pecking order of things.
Yeah, exactly.
The sort of high point of that season, and I think in my mind, I get which season it happened in. In my mind, it all happened in the previous year, the same year. But actually, the 5-0 against United is in this in the October-November of this season, isn't it?
It's really interesting because we got absolutely thumped by Man U in the Charity Shield 4-0, and I don't think the season had started as well as previous seasons. Going back to what you were saying, Graham, with that kind of getting loads of wins in.
Yeah.
So by the time Man U came, it was like, all right, we owe these guys something for what happened in predominantly last season, but also the pretty humiliating Charity Shield match. And apparently, I think Barton was saying that normally there was that really kind of happy changing room where Keegan was just doing his one-to-one man management and just not scaring people. But he said that that before that game it was just completely solemn. We've got to do a job here, and what a job they did. It was just. It defied belief, to be honest. It's one of those freak results you get every so often when a team beats the champions, but doesn't beat absolutely mullers them.
It was a fantastic performance. And
Yeah.
at the time, I think I was in the island of Lombok, and I got up in the middle of the night to watch it. And I think by 3-0, I turned it off because you could see where it was going, and it was no shock to learn the following morning it ended up 5. It was a fantastic performance. The players were in the right mindset, and some incredible goals. Is it the 5th goal from Philippe Albert?
Oh.
Or was it
that was the 5th one. That was the icing on the cake when obviously you're 4-0 down, and he just takes the ball and just drives with it from the centre back position. Everyone's telling him to shoot, to launch one, and he just chips Schmeichel. It's incredible, the balls to do that. I suppose you can do that when you're 4-0 up, can't you? And there was an amazing Ginola goal, I think one of his best for Newcastle as well, early on as well. But I think Shearer scored, Ferdinand scored, Spreer scored. I think, it's incredible.
From this huge high point, and as you say, I don't think there's a better moment under his reign than Philippe Albert's crowning goal in that game. The pressure starts to tell a little bit, and I think they win they do get a result against Middlesbrough, but they go on this run then of a very sticky period during November, December. It would sort of seem logical that Keegan might go then, but you just could never predict what he would do. So, they win, they beat Spurs 7-1.
Yeah.
And then he goes after that, doesn't he?
And then get a result against Leeds, 3-0. And then, now I'm calling it a day.
Yeah.
It's kind of absolutely, the timing is surreal.
Yeah, there's no rhyme nor reason to it. I think he had to be talked out of resigning before. But he just said, well, I've done all I can with this squad. And I think he was getting the feeling that he wasn't necessarily being backed as much as he wished to be, that he didn't have as much choice in the transfer market as he had done before. But, who knows? Maybe you could see that clearly it was getting to him. You could see the kind of the grey hair getting greyer and greyer and greyer, and and you could see looking as happy.
Newcastle, their stock market listed at this point, and there's a lot of kind of weird sort of 1990s thing that's kind of happening then. And there's definitely sort of, I think, some of the stuff I've read around it is this suggestion that they kind of either wanted him to commit for the long term or not at all. And I think you could totally understand. Keegan's been on a sort of massive roller coaster. He actually has generally not stayed very long anywhere during his career. This is probably as long a stint possibly that he's had anywhere.
Yeah, it's interesting. And just, going back to the PLC, you're suddenly dealing with shareholders and stuff like that, rather than having what he did have, which was a very close relationship with Sir John Hall. And that changes the dynamic, doesn't it, as well? When your kind of first responsibility is you've got to go through 2 or 3 stages to get what you want, rather than just go straight to the chairman, for instance.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah.
I think it's there's almost an element there, kind of a victim of the success to some extent. So I think it's quite easy in sort of hindsight to view it as, he never really recovered from the from missing out on the title the year before. But I think there's definitely something around the environment of being at the club was different from what it was in those glory days, and especially for a period for someone like Kevin Keegan, who's a real heart on his sleeve kind of. It's about the experience.
Yeah, I mean, I always think that with there's teams that get to the playoffs, for instance, and they come third and then they lose in the playoffs and they've got to go again the next year. You know, how do you galvanize a team, and most importantly, how do you do it yourself to just keep going year after year? And okay, yes, like you say, it wasn't necessarily an extended period of time, but to actually the disappointment that he must have felt personally, and then you've got these fanatical fans that are backing you and want you to win, but then you're thinking about, oh God, have I let them down, or all that kind of stuff. I mean, the pressure must be enormous, being, what we were talking about briefly earlier, being a manager in a one club town, just having to deal with that, because it isn't. I mean, if you've been up to Newcastle, just it is the stadium's there in the city centre. It's amazing.
As we discussed, once Keegan's decided something, there's no hanging around. He sort of swiftly goes, and not for the first time in his career. Kenny Dalglish is given the chance or the opportunity to fill the impossible shoes to fill.
Yeah, King Kev to King Kenny. Absolutely amazing. And I can remember back then I was thinking, okay, well, this guy was my favourite footballer when I first started getting into football, even though he's a Liverpool player. I mean, what a player. Absolutely brilliant. And what he did with Liverpool, and then obviously taking Blackburn to the Premiership title, you think, okay, well, it's sad news, but they've done pretty well as a replacement, haven't they?
It feels like a safe pair of hands, an absolute legend who's got this proven record in management. But the thing that I would worry about, reflecting on it clearly, Dalglish is going to bring a different style with this collection of players that Keegan has put together. And you can see almost immediately Dalglish brings a couple of his mates in. I think it's the following season. He brings in Rush and Barnes. But that style, is that me just trying to be a bit too general, or was there a different style once Dalglish arrived?
There were some amazing moments in Dalglish's reign, and within that season, particularly the next season, where kind of if you didn't know who was managing them necessarily, you still think, all right, that's pretty much the same kind of team, the same flair, the same kind of let's go 3-0 up against Barcelona, for instance. Absolutely amazing. But I think it was incremental with Kenny Dalglish, just that slight kind of changing a bit, like you say, bringing Barnes and Rush in. I mean, bit over the hill, perhaps. Not
fantastic, great players, but
but not in their prime necessarily. And then other decisions that were made during that time. Thinking about Les Ferdinand and Ginola both going to Spurs, and then you think, all right, I mean, Ginola and Ferdinand should have been playing hundreds of games for Newcastle. They loved the place, the fans loved them, they were absolutely brilliant, and yet they were let go at the end of the season, weren't they? And that for me is kind of why it never worked with Dalglish, because the players that he brought in were nowhere near as good.
He does get them to finish second. So between Keegan and Dalglish, with their bookends of this season, they finished second against United. And there's a big reward, because this is the first time that the Champions League has been extended to teams that are outside winning the championship. So the second place team in English football gets rewarded a Champions League, I think it's a playoff game to qualify for the league status. And Newcastle feel that. And they go to the European Cup, the Champions League, for the first time in their history. That must have been exciting.
Oh, absolutely. And, it was all new then, wasn't it? That idea of suddenly going from the European Cup, where you had one team from one, and then into the Champions League, and then this new, and now what's it going to be, 5 teams from England next season, which sort of is a bit of a joke, I think, ultimately.
They'll ease it a little bit, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's really, really exciting to get back into. It's just absolutely brilliant to be playing. But I mean, going back to Dalglish, I mean, taking over midway through the season and then coming second, I mean, it's still a massive achievement for the club.
Yeah.
Still absolutely brilliant. So I cannot knock him for that.
There are some highlights. As you say, Europe is... there's some entertainment there, particularly the win over Barcelona with Tino Aspria's hat-trick, an FA Cup final, although they didn't really turn up to that one. It's what became until the Carabao Cup this year, one in a series of cup finals where Newcastle didn't really turn up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's okay. I mean, who we play? We played the Arsenal team that won the double that year, and I think we played the Man U team the following season. I think it was that did the treble.
Yeah.
So we're playing two teams at the top of their powers. But yeah, it's very disappointing. I remember watching those at a mate's wedding, and the first one, just thinking, this is awful. Really
It felt, yeah. I mean, just reflecting, I don't remember the game fully, but it did feel quite one-sided, and I would definitely been going into that game thinking, "Come on, Newcastle!" But I don't think Newcastle were either in it. I think it was, completely one-sided.
Yeah, absolutely, very flat.
Dalglish is then replaced with an ill-fated spell from Ruud Hillet.
Yeah,
which on paper would have made some sense.
Sexy football, football's coming their way.
It wasn't sexy football, was it? I mean, our league position just dropped after that, and I don't think he was too popular with the players.
Did it all come to a head on a rainy night, maybe against Sunderland? But when he left, did he leave Shearer on the bench? I think on some crucial game, and I think that was the point. It was definitely a brave decision. A great one.
Yeah. I mean, it's like how far does a manager need to go to kind of assert his authority? All right, leave your best player on the bench.
So this Newcastle side are destined to not win anything, but they did win admirers along the way. So this is the tricky bit. How on earth do we rank this team? So, as a reminder, we have 5 categories of greatness, from all-time greats at the top, true greats, our middle category, touch of greatness, edge of greatness below that, and blinkered greats. And Jamie, as is my custom, I'm going to start with you. Where would you rank this side?
I think there's an absolute case to put them in edge of greatness, which is the 4th tier. But I'm not going to do that, because even though they come short in winning major honours, there's something about this football team that's to be admired. They do play football in a way that most football fans, generally speaking, want to see football played. They want to be entertained. We want to be entertained. And Keegan's football team's entertained. There's some wonderful footballers in this team as well. So, I mean, the logic tells me this is a touch of greatness, because it absolutely is a touch of greatness. My heart wants to push him even further because of the style of their play. But when I think about what we have in that bracket at the moment, I think I'm setting myself up for some trouble. But what I'm saying is I'm going to kick us off and put them in the 3rd tier, touch of greatness, because this is absolutely a touch of greatness in the highest way from Newcastle United. But I'm absolutely open to offers to promote them higher, not lower, Graham.
When we do our promotion relegation special, we probably will have a Sunderland fan on the show. So let's bear in mind that it will get whatever category we put them in, they will get voted down one. Simon, what do you think?
Well, thanks for that, Jamie. I mean, that's really cool coming from you. I mean, yeah, I mean, when you listed the teams that you've got in your first 2 categories, I'm thinking, well, this is a team that, was, I suppose, in many ways a bit of a flash in the pan, because for 2 seasons, 2.5 seasons maybe, they were performing brilliantly, but they didn't win anything. But they won the hearts and minds of so many fans not only in this country, but around the world as well. Because I think my parents were living in Malaysia at the time. And so we would be with all these Malaysians watching them, and they would go, this is fantastic, fantastic to watch. All of them Manikas, of course. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be happy with 2.5, to be honest. I think are they true greats? What they didn't sustain it for more than a couple of seasons, and they had some great. If you managed to keep that team together with Keegan for a couple more seasons, and then who knows what happened. If they'd won the Premier League in that 95-96 season, then I think definitely a case of putting them up to 2. But because they didn't, then I think they're a 2, but I think objectively speaking, probably 3 is more appropriate.
On the face of it, they are just on achievements alone. They're the definition of edge of greatness. They're but this team is so much more than that, and the journey they go on. And remember, this is a team that has been in the football wilderness 15 odd years or so, really, without really making much impact in there. But this is the whole story is style over substance, isn't it? It is they are genuine entertainers, the way they do it, both the charisma and personality on the pitch, but also off it. And Keegan was box office.
Yeah.
Absolute box office. There's no other way. And I think you're right, Simon, when you were talking about this side almost and being right at the birth of the Premier League and the Sky kind of era, this absolutely feels like they are the poster child for it. I just don't think you can get them up to true greats without having won anything. Whilst I'm all for the style, I think a 2.5 absolutely feels about right on this. It's right in there.
I'm happy with that.
So yeah, and I might fight for it in the promotion relegation battle. I'll definitely fight to keep them at
keep them in it. Yeah,
we're going to say Kevin Keegan's Newcastle United, touch of greats.
Simon, you made a really brilliant point. I wonder how many new Newcastle United fans were born in this era. I hadn't really considered it that way. There must have been a fair number around the world and in the UK that would have picked Newcastle as their team because of what they represented.
I'm absolutely sure. I mean, I was at watched the Carabao Cup final in an Irish bar in central Oslo, and I got in contact with the Newcastle United Supporters Club in Oslo, because there is one, and it was just packed with not Geordies, not expats, but packed with Norwegians in their black and white shirts, and just asking a couple of them, and a couple of them who were sort of our age did say it's because of watching them when I was, in my sort of early 20s to mid 20s, and they were just fantastic.
I don't think we can let it pass end before we talk about not only were they a beautiful football team, they had, and Simon, you're wearing the beautiful away kit. They had a beautiful kit, simple design, that Henley shirt, the black and white solid stripes. I mean, with the Adidas and Newcastle Brown Ale sponsor, it was a work of art. It was a thing of beauty, and probably one of my favorite football shirts of all time. And that's not just a generalization. I generally mean it. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful football shirt.
Oh yeah, it's quality, and I mean, I wish I had the long sleeve one, because used to wear that. And it was
and Simon, that's the one where the Adidas goes all the way down the sleeve, isn't it?
All the way down, yeah, absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I think it's always this kit is always listed as sort of one of the top away shirts of the Premiership era. And my brother's got the home kit, which is equally iconic.
Yeah,
apparently there's one of these that doesn't have the brown ale. It's got something else on. It's got Centre Parks on, because when they went to play in France in the Champions League or the UEFA Cup, they weren't allowed to advertise alcohol, so they had to change it. And those are incredibly rare. I mean, imagine getting your hands on one of those.
Wow, yeah, that would be fantastic.
Okay, well, we should leave it there. Thank you, Simon, so much for sharing some of your memories and and kind of thoughts on this, what is an extraordinary side.
Yeah, well, pleasure to meet you, Graham, and thank you very much. And I'd just like to talk about Newcastle, and hopefully a bit of enthusiasm about football's come through.
Jamie, thank you as ever.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Simon. Absolutely brilliant recounts of your time during this period. And, I can relate to it. I went through this period with you, but I was just on the other side of the fence.
And we will be back next week, probably with Chelsea, I think.